a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hello, everyone. Well, it's always great when a guest comes back and maybe with an update in what's going on in their life or their career. Today's returning guest is the multi-talented, multifaceted Mark Lanoue. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing all right. I think I almost went back to my Jersey roots. How are you?
I love accents. They're so good, as long as I can understand them. So any updates on what's happening with your musical career?
Well, we had a song that was in for best song for social change, but that one wasn't selected. There was actually a winner from, it's an Iranian musician.
Okay.
And but anyway, it's all competition. So somebody won, and we'll look forward to next year. But we have a new single, which is Firefly, which was out like maybe a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And that one will probably be submitted for Grammys next year. We're not sure yet exactly what else would be submitted because we're still working on new music. But we have a good friend of mine, Kit Wakely, great guy, very talented. He played on a couple of our tributes. He played on a Kansas tribute we did with Farmer Bob. And we are now working on a tribute for Meatloaf that he played on, and he won a Grammy last night. So I have to say, horns up, peace out, all that cool stuff. I'm really proud of him. He took home the gold for his music last night. So
now, when you're saying we, remind the audience who the we are.
Oh, okay, yeah. So basically, we have in Kick the Wicked, which is really the same people that are in our tribute group, which are Scott Campbell and Rory Fashion. But on the tributes, we also bring guests in. So Kit Wakely is an artist who has his own music. He just did some really cool music for something called The Adoption Story. Everybody should check it out. It's pretty cool. It's about his life, him going through foster care and adopting children himself. He and his wife have been, they adopted 3 really awesome kids. So, but as far as we have someone who's singing with us on a song, one of the tributes, which is Sharon Leah. She's another artist who's a Recording Academy colleague of mine and Kit's. We're all 3 of us are Recording Academy members. So so anyway, I'm really excited about that. I love working with other artists, as does Scott and Rory. We love doing that stuff. So
it seems to be a very common thing among musicians, which is something that I really love about musicians. Like they feel, I find that you're all very generous with your space. If I can put it that way,
Well, when you've been a diehard musician, even though I have another career now that I'm working with for obvious reasons, take care of family and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As a musician, I've been down that road. I've been homeless. I've been on the road. I've toured. So I know all of those little pieces of it. And the most fun part was being around the people. I'd leave the stage and come from behind the stage just to go out and see fans, because that's where it's all at. So
right, yeah. And I feel like there's room for everybody, whether you're a musician or whether you're doing something I do. Like there's room for everybody, right?
That's right. That's right.
Something maybe a little bit different, and that's what makes it so great, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're all an important piece of life and everything that happens. And sometimes we know what that importance is, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we find out later. And it's part of the whole it's part of the whole game of life, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I would just, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go back to, when you talk about, like in your bio, you mentioned some of your upbringing and some of the things that happened really early on in your life, right?
Sure.
So go
ahead. Yeah. So what's really funny about my upbringing in New Jersey is that, so my father he had some run-ins with the law occasionally, so he spent some time at Rikers Island and wonderful Galway State Prison. But he was also an associate of the Colombo crime family, so it was interesting upbringing because you moved around a lot, right? So, but hey, it's life lessons. It was after he was my father was murdered when I was 10, so after that happened, there was a couple of just like you see on TV, like hey, yo, Tony, little Ricky's coming, Ricky's son. Let's get here. Here's a brown paper bag. Go take it down to the deli on the corner. Drop that off when you come back. Just take that bolt off the bottom of that car. Here's some WD-40. Here it is, 1977. 10-year-old being paid $7 an hour. I mean, it was just here. We got your bike. Here, go ride that home to your mother. But my mother saw that coming, and she, then she uprooted us from there, and we ended up on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, which was another great move by that. God gave me the blessing of now I'm married to a Southern belle who's from there. My Southern belle, my little firecracker, and we have 3 lovely children. We have a grandson, and we're about to have another grandchild, or we're not. My daughter is, but that's
Very nice. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot in that growing up. I learned a lot from the streets of New Jersey. I learned that that rule of thumb that is something we tend to forget about, that it doesn't matter what a person looks like or where they come from or what they're into, what they believe. They're either coming up to you with a handshake or a blade, and at that point, that's where you have to make that determination of friend safe or foe stay away. So I try my best as a human being not to judge people based on other things other than those strict rules. One and the other is that you're either a friend or your foe, and but also remembering that we all make mistakes, and that we have to kind of make amends for that too. So but moving was great. It changed my life because as I started playing saxophone when I was in New Jersey, and I moved to Mississippi, ended up being in one of the top marching and concert bands in the whole United States, marched in some really cool parades, national parades, and then ultimately ended up picking up the guitar, and all the rest went from there. So, but my childhood was moving around was really interesting. I worked starting at the age of 10. I was actually pumping gas, and which you weren't supposed to be doing at 10, but
No.
it was New Jersey, so I was on Route 1 and 9, is what as they'd say, and right outside the Linden Airport. And I was pumping gas and cleaning windows, the old school days, just turned from Esso to Exxon. So,
Okay.
and so I learned to work very early on in life. During the summer, I'd sweep the fair and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, good on you. I think it takes a lot. It's not always easy to change a life like from what you grew up with, right? What you saw, until to make the person who you are now. It's not always easy, and I think it's wonderful when somebody can make those solid decisions for themselves, especially at such a young age. To decide very young that you needed to be a different person, right?
Yeah, and I'd say that my grandmother, what we called her Nanny, God rest her soul, she lived to be almost 101. She almost made it to 101, but I grew up in the church, and it gave me that solid foundation that I had something to answer to. The thing about it is that a lot of times the kids in the streets, they don't have something that's a higher order of maintenance, I would say. It's like, so if I do that, what am I going to get for it? What's the punishment? What's keeping me from doing that? I could be rich by doing that. And so I think that's something that really helps when you're in, because it's very easy to get caught up in that. I mean, I've seen lots of those kids go from carrying paper bags to shooting people, so, it's, and there's a lot you see in those big cities. I've seen everything. I saw death at a very young age. Watching it, I remember there was a story when I was working on that corner on the highway. I heard these cars ripping down the road, and I was right on the edge of the highway. And right next to me, a Volkswagen flips over in the streets, just tumbling right past me and drops a person right there in front of me on the ground. The other one went up into the divider. It was an 11-year-old driving an LTD and a 19-year-old driving a Volkswagen. They stole the vehicles from down the road, were being chased by the police down the highway, and hit the back of a bus and flipped over. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us have only seen those things in movies.
Well, sometimes when you live in those inner cities, it's a true story. You kind of live in the middle of those movies, right? So
yeah. It's also fascinating. I can't help but be fascinated by, by people's stories, right? The things
sure.
And the road that you took to get where you are today.
Sure.
So that's again, I admire stuff like that. I think it's wonderful. Now you're also in another band, right?
Yes, there's a band called Fiction 6.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that actually had a song that was submitted for Best Song for Social Change.
Right.
It was a song called Innocence. And that song is really something that I've held close all my life, is that, as we go astray, we have to go back and remember what it was like to be children. And so one of the lines in the song is, look into the eyes of children and lose yourself within their innocence. And it's basically saying, remember that you were just like them, now blinded by a self-society. And so that whole premise is what that song's about. And it's one of the songs I'm really, really, that was written between myself and J.K. Northrup from Fiction 6. And I'm just, that's one of the, I have two songs in my life. That's one of the two that I'm very, very proud of. The other one was Fine Line, which I wrote back in New Jersey many years ago, and was actually released on an album in 1998 on Escape Music Limited, and it turned up to be the title track. And there were songs on there by Bon Jovi, Aldanova, members of Foreigner, members of Loverboy, all kinds of different stars were on there, and Dean Fasano was singing on it. He passed away in 2009, one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. He was in a band with Richie Sambora called Mercy and Message. And later on, Message was the one that released that Fine Line album. And it was that was the other song that was really awesome. My friends Chris Flowers and Mike Gear, we were all down there in the basement in New Jersey, pump the old school way, putting music together, and it was just really great experience. So
that is so wonderful. Yeah, right. Well, I want to thank you for coming back on the show to just give me an update and give the audience an update of what's going on too. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Maybe one of these days we're going to have you on with some of the other members of the bands.
That would be awesome. I'm sure they would be glad to do that. I've done those before. They're far and few a lot of times because they're always in the middle of something. JK's probably mastering and mixing something, and Scott works for Universal, so he's probably over there telling people how to fix stuff. Right. Yeah. But I would love to do that. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll talk about it after I say goodbye to the audience. So thank you, everybody, for watching the show. You've been listening to Mark Lanoue and Lanoue. Sorry, I don't know why I said Lanoue. Getting myself.
If only we have known.
Mark Lanoue, there we go. So thanks everybody again for watching the show, and I hope you keep on doing so. And take care, everybody, and peace out.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's a place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's a place to be, you'll see.